Some people don't ask for help, even when the lights go out. The city was still awake, but the penthouse felt like it had already shut down for the night, silent, controlled, distant from everything below. Evelyn Carter stood barefoot on polished marble, one hand wrapped around a glass of untouched sparkling water, the other loosely holding her phone as it buzzed again on the kitchen counter. She didn't check it. She hadn't checked the last 10. The skyline outside stretched for miles, glowing in soft gold and cold blue, but none of it reached her. Not tonight. Not after the deal. 12 hours of negotiations. 3 firms backed down. 1 signed. The headlines would call it a victory by morning. But in the quiet, it felt like something else entirely. Then the lights flickered. Once. Twice. And went out. Not fully. Just enough to dim the room into something softer, uncertain. The hum of the air system cut. The refrigerator clicked off. Even the city outside seemed quieter for a second, like it noticed. Evelyn didn't move. She just exhaled slowly, staring at the reflection of herself in the darkened glass. Sharp lines, controlled posture. A woman who never let anything slip. A beat passed. Then another. Somewhere behind the walls, something electrical snapped faintly. She closed her eyes for half a second. When she opened them, she reached for her phone, scrolled without really looking, and tapped the building maintenance contact. "Send someone up," she said. Her voice was steady. Always steady. 20 minutes later, there was a knock. Not loud. Not rushed. Just there. She walked to the door, heels in hand now, her steps quiet against the floor. When she opened it, the hallway light spilled in behind him first, then the man. Marcus Hale stood there, jacket damp from the rain, a small tool bag resting at his side. He didn't step in right away, didn't scan the room, didn't react to the space the way most people did. His eyes met hers once, briefly, then settled somewhere neutral, respectful but not distant. "Evening, ma'am," he said. His voice was low, calm, like the night hadn't asked anything of him yet. Evelyn stepped aside without a word. He walked in, boots soft against the floor, careful without being overly cautious. No hesitation, no curiosity, just presence. He set his bag down near the wall, crouched, and opened it with practiced ease, tools laid out in quiet order. The faint scent of rain followed him in, mixing with something warmer, coffee, maybe, or something lived in. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The penthouse, for all its size, felt smaller with him there. Not crowded, just less empty. Marcus moved toward the breaker panel, glancing once at the ceiling lights, then at the outlets along the wall. "Power's not fully out," he said, more to himself than to her. "Just unstable." Evelyn leaned lightly against the counter, watching without appearing to watch. Most people talked when they were here, filled the silence. Tried to impress her, or worse, tried to guess who she was beyond the name on the building directory. He didn't. He just worked. And somehow, that made the silence feel different. Not heavy, not awkward, just real. A small click echoed as he adjusted something behind the panel. Then, a single lamp across the room flickered back to life. Warm light. Soft. Not the harsh overhead glow she was used to. It settled into the space like it belonged there. Marcus didn't turn to look at her. He just nodded once, almost to himself, and reached for the next tool. And for reasons she couldn't explain, Evelyn didn't reach for her phone again. The light held, soft and steady, casting a quiet glow across the marble and glass. And for the first time that night, the penthouse did not feel like a showroom. It felt like a place someone could stay in without performing. Marcus tightened a screw inside the panel, then paused, listening not just to the wiring but to the room itself. The kind of listening that came from years of fixing things no one else noticed. Evelyn shifted her weight slightly against the counter, the cool stone no longer as sharp beneath her skin. She watched him without turning her head fully, her eyes catching small details she would normally ignore. The way he moved without wasting motion. The way he did not check his reflection in the glass. The way he did not try to fill the silence with questions. "It flickers when the load spikes," he said after a moment, still focused on the panel. "You have too many systems pulling at once." His tone was not critical, just matter of fact, like he was describing the weather. Evelyn glanced toward the ceiling where recessed lights remained dim, then back at him. "Can you fix it tonight?" she asked, her voice even, controlled. He nodded once. "I can stabilize it." A beat. "Full fix might take longer." He reached into his bag and pulled out another tool, metal brushing softly against metal. The sound grounded the room in a way her usual silence never did. She set her glass down without drinking. The faint click echoing more than it should have. Marcus did not react, but he noticed. He always noticed. "You should eat something," he said a few seconds later, still not looking at her. The words landed gently, without expectation. Evelyn stilled, not because of the suggestion, but because of how it was given. No edge, no attempt to impress, no awareness of who she was supposed to be. Just a simple observation. She almost responded with something automatic, something polite and distant. But the words did not come. Instead, she let the moment sit, unfamiliar and strangely unguarded. Marcus reached into the side pocket of his jacket and pulled out a small paper container, slightly worn at the edges. He set it on the counter within reach, but not directly in front of her. "My kid did not finish it," he said. "It is still warm." He did not open it, did not push it closer, did not wait for her reaction. Evelyn looked at the container, then at him, her brows barely tightening, not in suspicion, but in confusion. No one offered her something without a reason, without a follow-up, without turning it into something else. "You always bring leftovers to work?" she asked quietly. Marcus gave a small shrug, adjusting another wire. "Sometimes." A pause. "Depends on the day." The answer was incomplete, but not evasive, just enough. Evelyn stepped closer to the counter, the distance between them narrowing without announcement. She opened the container slowly. Inside was a simple meal, nothing curated, nothing expensive, just something real. She did not eat right away. She just looked at it, then closed it again, her hand resting lightly on the lid. Marcus finished securing the panel and stood, wiping his hands with a worn cloth he pulled from his pocket. The faint scent of machine oil mixed with the lingering warmth of food. He turned slightly toward the room, not toward her, and checked the lights. Again, another lamp steadied, the hum of the system returning in a softer, controlled rhythm. "That should hold for tonight," he said. Evelyn nodded, but her attention was no longer on the lights. It was on the absence of pressure, the lack of expectation. The way the room felt less like something she owned and more like something she could exist inside. She picked up the container again, this time opening it without hesitation. And for the first time that evening, she took a bite, not because she was hungry, but because no one was watching her to see if she would. The food was simple, but it stayed with her longer than it should have. Not on her tongue, but somewhere quieter, somewhere she had not checked in years. Evelyn set the container down slowly, not finished, not abandoned, just paused. Marcus had already returned to the panel, adjusting something deeper behind the wall, the faint hum of electricity smoothing out like a breath finally settling. The city outside flickered in distant reflections, but inside the room, the light no longer fought to stay on. It simply existed, steady and unbothered. "You live nearby?" she asked after a while, her voice softer now, less precise. Marcus did not turn. "About 20 minutes, he said, then added after a beat. "Traffic depending." It was a small answer, but it carried a life inside it. One with schedules and school pickups and grocery stops that did not care about skyline views or boardroom wins. Evelyn leaned her hip lightly against the counter, arms loosely crossed, not defensive, just resting. "You always work this late?" she asked. Marcus tightened one last connection and closed the panel halfway. Not fully done, but enough to step back. "Late works better," he said. "My son gets out of school around 3. I am there when he walks out." He wiped his hands again, slower this time. Like the work was no longer urgent. Evelyn's eyes shifted, not to him directly, but to the space around him. Imagining something she could not quite place, a smaller apartment, maybe a kitchen that smelled like real meals, a door that opened at the same time every day. "How old is he?" she asked. Marcus rested the cloth on the counter. 8. A faint pause. "Thinks he is 10. The corner of his mouth moved just enough to suggest something close to a smile. Evelyn noticed, not the smile itself, but the way it arrived without effort, without performance. She looked down at the container again, then back at him. "You trust strangers easily," she said, not accusing, just observing. Marcus finally glanced at her, not long, just enough to meet her eyes without holding them. "Not really," he said, then added, "I just do not assume the worst." The words settled between them, quiet, but heavier than anything said before. "Evelyn, Inhaled slowly, as if something in her chest had to adjust to that. She turned slightly, walking toward the window, the city stretching beneath her again, but now it felt further away, like something she watched instead of something she stood inside. Her phone buzzed again on the counter behind her, insistent, familiar. She did not turn around. Marcus followed the sound briefly with his eyes, then looked away, giving the moment back to her without taking it. The rain tapped softly against the glass now, steady, unhurried. "You should answer that," he said, not as instruction, just as fact. Evelyn shook her head once, small, almost invisible. "It can wait," she said. And for once, she meant it. Marcus nodded, accepting that without question. He reached for his bag, closing it halfway, not leaving yet, just preparing, the kind of preparation that did not rush the moment, but did not linger on it either. Evelyn turned back from the window, her posture different now, less rigid, less curated. "Do you ever get tired?" she asked, the question slipping out before she could measure it. Marcus paused, one hand resting on the edge of his bag. "Yeah," he said simply, then after a beat, "but not the kind that sleep fixes." The honesty in it was quiet, almost hidden, but it landed deeper than any polished answer she had heard in years. Evelyn looked at him then, really looked, not at the jacket or the tools or the role he filled in her building, but at the steadiness he carried. Without announcing it, the kind of steadiness that did not come from control, but from choosing not to lose it. The room held that silence again, but it was no longer empty. It was full of things neither of them needed to say, and for the first time in a long time, Evelyn Carter did not feel the need to fill it. The silence stretched, but it did not strain. It settled, like something that had finally found where it belonged. Marcus zipped his tool bag halfway, then stopped, his hand resting on the worn fabric as if he was listening again, not to the wires this time, but to the room, to her, to something unspoken that had not been there when he first walked in. Evelyn stepped away from the window, slower now, her movements no longer measured for anyone watching. The city behind her kept moving, lights shifting, traffic flowing. But inside, time had softened. "Is it always this quiet for you?" she asked, her voice low, not breaking the stillness, just touching it. Marcus glanced toward her, then toward the lamp he had fixed. "Sometimes," he said. "Depends on the night." He did not ask her the same question back, and somehow that made it easier for her to keep talking. She walked a few steps closer, not fully closing the distance, just enough to feel it change. "I do not remember the last time I heard a room like this," she admitted, the words coming out without the usual filter. Marcus nodded once, not surprised, not curious, just accepting it as fact. "Most places are not built for quiet," he said. "They are built to keep things running." Evelyn let out a small breath that almost sounded like a laugh, but did not quite make it there. "That sounds familiar," she said. Marcus leaned back slightly against the wall, not claiming space, just existing in it. His posture relaxed in a way that did not ask permission, the kind of ease that came from knowing who you were without needing anyone else to confirm it. Evelyn watched him for a moment, then looked down at her hands. Empty now, no phone, no glass, nothing to hold between her and the moment. "Do you ever turn it off?" she asked. "All of it." Marcus tilted his head slightly, considering. "Not all at once," he said. "Just parts of it, a beat, enough to hear yourself think." The answer landed somewhere deeper than she expected. Evelyn nodded slowly, absorbing it, then glanced toward the door, toward the hallway that led back into the version of her life that never paused. "I do not think I know how to do that," she said, not as a complaint, just as a truth she had not said out loud before. Marcus did not offer advice, did not explain. He just let the statement sit, giving it space to be what it was. After a moment, he reached into his pocket and checked his watch. A small, practical movement, grounding. "I should finish up," he said, stepping back toward the panel. But his pace was unhurried, as if leaving too quickly would break something that had just begun to hold. Evelyn nodded, but she did not move away this time. She stayed where she was, close enough to hear the soft clicks as he secured the final connections. The system responded with a steady hum. The lights above brightened slightly, then settled into balance. Not harsh, not dim, just right. Marcus closed the panel fully and stood, wiping his hands again. The routine simple, familiar, complete. "You are good now," he said, Glancing around once more to be sure, Evelyn followed his gaze, taking in the room as if seeing it differently, not as something she controlled, but as something she could choose to stay in, or leave, or change. And for the first time, that choice did not feel automatic. Marcus picked up his bag. Adjusting the strap over his shoulder, he stepped toward the door, not hesitating, not lingering, just moving forward the way he always did, steady. Evelyn watched him reach for the handle, something in her chest tightening slightly. Not panic, not fear, just the quiet awareness that whatever this was, it was about to end, and she was not sure she wanted it to. Her voice came before she fully decided to speak, softer than before, almost careful. "Marcus," he paused, his hand resting on the door but not opening it yet. He turned his head slightly, not fully, just enough to listen, and in that small pause, the room held its breath again, waiting for something neither of them had planned to say. Marcus did not turn all the way around. He just shifted enough to face her without fully stepping back into the room, his hand still resting on the door handle, steady, unhurried, like he had already decided he was not in control of what came next, and did not need to be. Evelyn stood where she was, a few feet away, but something in the space between them had changed. It was no longer distance. It was something closer to choice. She did not move forward, did not retreat. She just stayed, her fingers lightly brushing against the edge of the counter as if grounding herself in something physical before speaking again. "You said it is quieter there," she said, her voice even but softer than before. Marcus gave a small nod. "It is," he replied. No elaboration. No attempt to make it sound like more than it was. Just a simple truth. Evelyn looked at him, not searching for anything, just holding the moment long enough to understand it. The rain outside continued its steady rhythm against the glass. The city still moving, still loud somewhere beyond these walls. But here, it felt like everything had slowed just enough to notice what mattered. She inhaled, slow, controlled, but not calculated. "What if I do not want to go back out there tonight?" she said, the words landing quietly. Without drama, without demand, Marcus watched her for a brief second, not evaluating, not questioning, just seeing. Then he shrugged slightly, a natural movement, unforced. "Then you do not have to," he said, as if the answer had always been that simple. Evelyn let out a breath she did not realize she had been holding, her shoulders lowering just enough to notice. She glanced toward her phone again, still buzzing faintly against the counter, then away, choosing not to reach for it. Not this time, not yet. The room held that decision without needing to acknowledge it. Marcus shifted his weight, finally letting go of the door handle. But he did not step closer. He stayed where he was, giving her the space to close the gap if she wanted, or leave it open if she did not. "It is not much," he added after a moment, his voice calm, almost matter of fact. "Just a couch, small kitchen, probably too many toys on the floor." A faint pause. "But it is quiet." He did not dress it up, did not turn it into an offer that needed to impress. He simply placed it there, the way he had placed the food earlier, within reach, without expectation. Evelyn's lips pressed together slightly, not in hesitation, but in thought. She walked a few steps closer, stopping just short of where he stood, the distance now smaller, more intentional. She looked at him directly, her eyes clearer than before, not guarded, just present. "You do not know anything about me," she said, not as a warning, but as a fact that used to matter more than it did right now. Marcus met her gaze briefly, then looked at the floor between them, then back up again. "I know enough," he said quietly, the same words, but different now, carrying something steadier. Evelyn held his gaze a second longer this time, searching for something that was not hidden, something that did not shift under pressure. And for the first time in a long time, she did not find anything she needed to question. The silence returned again, but it was no longer waiting for something to happen. It was allowing something to exist. She tilted her head slightly, the smallest movement, and asked, not sharply, not playfully, but with a kind of quiet seriousness that surprised even her, "Do you mean that?" Marcus did not answer right away, not because he was unsure, but because he did not rush words. That mattered. He nodded once, simple, grounded. "Yes," he said, nothing more, and somehow, that was enough to change everything in the room. The word stayed in the air longer than it should have, not loud, not dramatic, just steady. like everything else about him. Evelyn did not look away this time. She held his answer, tested it without speaking, and for once, it did not shift under her gaze. It did not try to impress her. It did not adjust itself to fit what she expected. It simply remained what it was. Yes, she repeated quietly, not questioning, just letting it settle. Marcus did not add anything, did not explain. He simply stood there, his hand now off the door, his posture unchanged, as if the weight of the moment did not require him to carry it differently. Evelyn glanced toward the hallway behind him, then back into the room. The warm light, the quiet hum, the absence of pressure, it all felt temporary, like something that would disappear the moment he stepped out. And for the first time, she did not want that. She turned and walked toward the counter, picking up her phone, the screen still alive with missed calls and unread messages. She looked at it for a second, then pressed and held until it went dark. No hesitation, no second thought, just a decision made without needing to justify it. Marcus noticed, but he did not react. He simply waited, giving her the space to choose what came next without guiding it. Evelyn set the phone down and reached for her heels, then paused, looking at them in her hand like they belonged to a version of herself. She was not stepping back into tonight. She placed them back on the counter, barefoot again, grounded in a way she had not allowed in years. She took a slow breath, then stepped toward him, closing the remaining distance not quickly, not cautiously, just deliberately. "I do not do this," she said, her voice calm, but honest in a way that did not ask for approval. Marcus nodded once. "You do not have to," he replied, and the simplicity of it shifted something again. She shook her head slightly, a small movement. "No," she said, softer now. "I mean, I do not usually choose something without knowing exactly what it leads to." A pause, and I still do not. Marcus adjusted the strap of his bag on his shoulder, not to leave, just to settle into standing there. "Then maybe that is the point," he said, not as advice, just as a thought placed gently between them. Evelyn looked at him, studying the way he did not push, did not pull, did not try to define what this was supposed to be, and that absence of control felt unfamiliar, but not unsafe. She exhaled slowly, then nodded once, as if agreeing with something she had not fully put into words yet. "Okay," she said, simple, clear, and for the first time that night, certain in a way that did not come from planning. Marcus opened the door then, stepping aside slightly, not gesturing, not leading, just creating space for her to decide if she would follow. Evelyn took one last look at the penthouse, the skyline, the life that waited on the other side of that door, then turned away from it without hesitation. She stepped forward, past him, into the hallway, the light there cooler, sharper, but it did not pull her back. Marcus closed the door behind them with a soft click, the sound final but not heavy, just a quiet shift from one space to another. They stood there for a second, side by side, not touching, not speaking, the elevator at the end of the hallway waiting, its soft hum steady. Marcus started walking first, not fast, not slow, just forward. Evelyn followed, her steps light against the floor, not matching his exactly, but close enough to feel like they were moving in the same direction. And for the first time in a long time, she did not know where she was going, and she did not need to. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, and for a brief second, neither of them stepped in, as if crossing that threshold meant something neither of them had fully named yet. Marcus moved first, not looking back, just stepping inside and turning to the side, leaving space open. Evelyn followed a beat later, her bare feet quiet against the polished floor. The doors closed behind them with a muted click, sealing off the world she had just walked away from. The descent began smoothly, almost unnoticeable, a gentle shift in gravity more than motion. Evelyn leaned lightly against the side wall, her arms resting at her sides, not crossed, not guarded, just there. Marcus stood near the panel, one hand loosely holding the strap of his bag, his gaze forward, not fixed on anything in particular. The silence between them returned, but it was different now, no longer uncertain, no longer waiting to be filled, just shared. The numbers above the door ticked down slowly, each floor passing without urgency. Evelyn glanced at the reflection in the elevator door, catching a glimpse of herself standing there without heels, without her phone, without the usual markers of control, and for a moment, she almost did not recognize the person looking back. not because she had changed, but because something had been set down, something she had been carrying so long she forgot it was there. "Does your son know you are bringing someone home?" she asked quietly. The question simple, but not casual. Marcus shook his head slightly. "He is probably asleep," he said, then added after a pause. But he would not mind. There was no hesitation in it. No need to reassure or explain, just a quiet certainty. Evelyn nodded, absorbing that. The idea of a space where her presence would not need to be justified felt unfamiliar, almost foreign. The elevator slowed, then stopped. The doors opening into a quieter lobby, softer lighting. Less polished, more lived in. Marcus stepped out, his pace the same as always, steady, unhurried. Evelyn followed, her steps lighter now, not measured against anything, just moving. The night air greeted them as the outer doors opened, cool and damp from the rain. The city sounded different at street level, closer, less distant, tires passing over wet pavement, the low hum of engines, the occasional voice carried by the air. Marcus adjusted his jacket slightly, glancing once at the sky before stepping forward. Evelyn wrapped her arms lightly around herself, not from discomfort, but from the shift in temperature. The ground beneath her feet felt different without the barrier of heels, more immediate, more real. They walked side by side down the sidewalk, not touching, not speaking, their pace naturally aligning without effort. A car passed, headlights briefly illuminating them before fading into the distance. Evelyn glanced at him once, then away, not out of avoidance, but because. She did not need to look constantly to feel his presence. It was there, steady, unchanging. "How far?" she asked after a while. Marcus nodded ahead. 2 blocks, then a right," he said. Simple directions, no embellishment. They continued walking, the rhythm of their steps blending with the quiet pulse of the city at night. A small storefront they passed had its lights still on, warm and inviting, a contrast to the sharp glow of office towers behind them. Evelyn slowed slightly, taking it in. Not the store itself, but the feeling of it, the normalcy, the absence of expectation. Marcus noticed but did not comment. He simply adjusted his pace to match hers. The smallest shift, almost invisible, but intentional. They reached the corner and turned. The street ahead narrower, quieter, lined with older buildings that carried the weight of years without apology. A single street lamp flickered once, then steadied, casting a soft circle of light on the sidewalk. Marcus stopped in front of a modest building. Nothing remarkable, nothing designed to impress, just a place that existed without needing to prove anything. He reached into his pocket for his keys, then paused for a fraction of a second, not to reconsider, but to acknowledge the moment, before unlocking the door and stepping aside once more, leaving the choice open, as he always did. And Evelyn, without hesitation this time, stepped inside. The hallway inside was narrow but clean, lit by a soft yellow glow that felt warmer than anything she had left behind. The kind of light that did not try to impress, just existed to guide you forward. Marcus stepped in first, holding the door open without looking back, giving her the same quiet choice he had given all night. Evelyn crossed the threshold without hesitation, the door closing behind her with a gentle click that echoed differently here. Less sharp, more settled. The air inside carried a faint mix of detergent and something familiar, something lived in, not curated, not staged, just real. Marcus moved toward a short set of stairs, his steps light despite the worn wood beneath him. Evelyn followed, her hand brushing lightly against the railing, feeling the texture, the imperfections, the proof that this place had been used, not preserved. At the top of the stairs, he unlocked another door, pushing it open slowly. The apartment beyond was modest, quiet, and warm in a way that did not come from temperature alone. A small lamp in the corner was already on, casting a soft glow across a simple living room. A couch with a folded blanket, a low table with a few scattered crayons, a pair of small sneakers placed neatly by the wall, everything in its place, but not perfectly arranged, just cared for. Marcus stepped inside and set his bag down by the door, his movements instinctive, familiar. He glanced once toward a closed door down the short hallway, then back to her. "He is asleep," he said quietly, not as a warning, just as information. Evelyn nodded, her voice not needed. She stepped further in, her eyes moving slowly across the room. taking in details she would normally overlook. A drawing taped slightly crooked on the refrigerator, a calendar marked with small notes in uneven handwriting, a book left open on the arm of the couch. Nothing expensive, nothing designed to signal status, but everything carried intention. She walked toward the couch, her fingers brushing lightly against the backrest. Feeling the fabric, worn but clean, Marcus moved to the kitchen area, opening a cabinet without noise, pulling out a glass and filling it with water from the sink. The sound soft, steady. He placed it on the table near her without comment. The same way he had offered everything else, within reach, without expectation. Evelyn looked at the glass, then at him, a small nod of acknowledgement passing between them without words. She sat down slowly, not carefully, just naturally, the cushion giving slightly under her weight. She exhaled, and this time, it was not controlled. It was released. Marcus leaned lightly against the counter, giving her space, not watching her directly, but aware, always aware. The apartment held a different kind of silence. Not the polished quiet of her penthouse, but a lived silence, one that had room for small sounds. The faint ticking of a clock, the soft hum of the refrigerator, the distant rhythm of rain against the window. Evelyn glanced toward the hallway again, then back to him. "It feels different," she said softly. Marcus nodded once. "It is," he replied. No explanation, no need to define it. She looked down at her hands, resting loosely in her lap. No phone, no glass, nothing to hold. And for once, she did not reach for anything. She just sat there, letting the moment be what it was. Marcus pushed off the counter and walked toward a small shelf, picking up a folded blanket and placing it gently on the back of the couch within her reach. A quiet gesture, not announced, not emphasized, just done. Evelyn noticed, not the action itself, but the way it was given. Without asking for anything in return, she leaned back slightly, her shoulders lowering, her posture no longer holding anything up. And in that small, quiet apartment, surrounded by things that were not hers, she felt something she had not allowed herself in years. Not control, not certainty, but something simpler, something steadier, something that did not need to be earned. And for the first time that night, she did not think about leaving. The room settled into a quiet rhythm that did not ask anything from her. The kind of quiet that did not feel empty but full, like something steady beneath the surface. Evelyn leaned back into the couch, the fabric soft but grounded, her feet resting flat against the floor, her shoulders no longer carrying the weight they had held all day. Marcus moved through the space without drawing attention to himself, rinsing a cup in the sink, turning off a light in the kitchen that did not need to stay on. Each motion small, intentional, part of a life that functioned without needing to be seen. She watched him for a moment, not because she was trying to understand him, but because she did not need to understand him to feel the difference. The closed door down the hallway remained still, a quiet reminder of the life that existed here beyond this moment. A child asleep, a routine that would begin again in the morning without asking permission from the world outside. "Does he ever wake up in the middle of the night?" she asked softly, her voice almost blending into the room. Marcus shook his head slightly, drying his hands with a towel. "Not anymore," he said, then added after a pause, "He used to." The words carried something unspoken, something that did not need to be explained. Evelyn nodded, accepting that the same way she had accepted everything else tonight. Without pushing, without needing more, she reached for the blanket he had placed beside her and pulled it lightly over her lap, the fabric warm, familiar in a way she could not place. Her eyes drifted toward the small drawing on the refrigerator again, lines uneven, colors slightly outside the edges, but intentional. She stood slowly, walking toward it without thinking, her fingers hovering just short of touching the paper. "He made this," she said, not really asking. Marcus glanced over, then nodded. "Last week," he replied, "said it was us at the park," a faint hint of something softer in his voice. Evelyn studied it for another second, then stepped back, returning to the couch, the movement unhurried, unguarded. She sat down again, this time letting herself sink into it fully, her head resting lightly against the back, her eyes closing for just a moment, not to escape, just to be still. Marcus turned off the last light in the kitchen, leaving only the lamp near the couch, its glow steady, warm enough. He did not sit next to her, did not move closer. He simply took a seat in the chair across the room, far enough to give her space, close enough that she was not alone, the distance measured. Without needing to be discussed, Evelyn opened her eyes again, looking at him through the soft light. "Thank you," she said. The words simple, but not automatic. Marcus nodded once, accepting it without deflecting, without expanding it into something larger. "You are welcome," he replied, his voice as steady as before. The room fell quiet again, but this time it carried something different, something settled, something complete. Evelyn looked around the small apartment once more, not evaluating, not comparing, just seeing it as it was. And in that moment, she realized something she had not been able to name before. It was not the space, not the couch, not even the silence. It was the absence of expectation, the way nothing here demanded anything from her, the way she did not have to be anything other than present. Her breathing slowed, her body finally catching up to the stillness around her. And as her eyes grew heavier, she did not fight it. She let them close, not out of exhaustion alone, but out of trust. Marcus remained where he was, watching the quiet settle around her without interruption, without need to adjust it. The rain outside softened, the city dimmed, and somewhere between the steady hum of the night and the warmth of a place that asked nothing in return, something shifted in a way that did not need to be spoken. He had not raised his voice. He had not tried to change her world, but in the quiet space he offered, he had changed how it felt to live in it.